Have you ever felt more like your parent's confidant than their child? This complex and often overlooked dynamic is known as emotional incest. Emotional incest is a really undercover topic in the mental health space, so let's jump right in today. Emotional incest, sometimes referred to as covert incest or parentification, is a form of emotional abuse where a parent or primary caregiver treats a child as a surrogate partner, relying on them to fulfill their own emotional needs that are typically met by another adult. There's a term clinicians use called enmeshment that comes up a lot in these relationships. Enmeshment is when the lines between parent and child get very blurry or sometimes disappear completely. The child ends up taking on a more mature emotional role, often becoming the main source of support for their parent. Don't feel a need to memorize these terms. I just always think it's good to introduce clinical terminology, where and when we can, not only to educate, but also to just validate your experiences. These aren't vague ideas that may or may not exist. They're real studied concepts. By the way, if you decide after this video that you want more resources or are considering treatment, you can get in touch with us at Charlie Health at the links in the description below. So let's introduce some examples. What does emotional incest look like in day-to-day life? It looks like a parent oversharing personal struggles, things like relationship issues or financial stress, expecting their child to listen and provide emotional support as if they were their therapist. It could also be a child feeling responsible for their parents' happiness, constantly trying to cheer them up or solve their problems, even at the expense of their own well-being. Maybe a parent getting jealous of their child's friendships or romantic relationships, making them feel guilty for spending time with others instead of prioritizing the parent in that relationship. The general theme here is a child being pressured to be a caretaker for their parent when it's them that should be the one receiving care and guidance. It's an unfair, overwhelming position, and it can affect them well into adulthood. In my experience with emotional incest, I've been able to identify about 4 root causes that stem from the parent when we're uncovering this dynamic. So the first one is abandonment trauma. Perhaps your parent has felt abandoned in the past. A child is a sort of captive audience, and so they can reduce their fear of any future abandonment by becoming emotionally dependent on you. A second one is unhealthy boundaries. This could come from having poor role models. Maybe they were even victims of emotional incest growing up, or just a general lack of self-care. A third one is distrust. Often parents who engage in emotional incest have some issue in their own past that causes them to not trust other adults. This could be due to getting abused or hurt in the past, or having a history of unhealthy, unstable relationships. The last one is an insufficient support system. A parent may turn to a child for emotional support if they don't have any adults in their own support system. Maybe they're going through a divorce where they've lost their primary partner or main adult relationship and feel like they don't have anyone else to turn to other than their child. So now let's talk about consequences for the child. These issues at home can create a variety of problems, and in the past few years, we've started to see some research that validates it. This review was done in the large context of the COVID-19 pandemic, when pandemic-induced responsibilities and demands on youth affected the nature of parentification and its consequences. This review established 2 themes. Theme 1 was that internalizing problems such as depressive symptoms, broad spectrum, and distress are linked to parentification in general and emotional parentification in particular. Theme 2 found that externalizing problems such as antisocial behavior are associated with emotional parentification. More recently, it is reported that 2 to 8% of youth under age 18 are young carers in high-income countries. So as we can see, emotional parentification is very pervasive and has actually been exacerbated during the COVID-19 pandemic. Although we're no longer in quarantine spending 24/7 with our parents and families, it doesn't mean that some of those problematic dynamics and relationship issues aren't still impacting you right now. If you think you might have dealt with or are currently experiencing emotional incest, there's a few things we can do to start working on it now. So the first is recognition. We really want to think about the environment. What's really prevalent with emotional parentification is childhood trauma, whether for yourself or for your parent. We have a quiz here. Feel free to check it out. That might be a really good starting place. So something else that we see is anxious attachment. We also have a quiz for that. When we think about anxious attachment, we're thinking about the impact of insecurities then leading to codependency between parent and child relationships. It's a really interrelated issue when it comes to emotional parentification in this topic for today. So to wrap it up for today, I really want to think a little bit about why this issue is so undercovered, right? If you do a quick Google search of emotional incest, there's really not a lot of resources out there. In my opinion, I think emotional incest is under-discussed because oftentimes nobody can see the issue. It can present itself as a sense of closeness between family members, which seems like a positive thing. People might say what a great mom or dad this person is, that they are so close, so emotionally vulnerable. In reality, they are way too close, and they are likely forcing their problems onto their child. And it's especially complicated because the ways in which your parents are showing their appreciation, their love, and their support for you might actually be making you feel distressed, overwhelmed, and anxious. So if you're beginning to get to that place, this video is a great starting place to get some more information and maybe check out the quizzes, and then come back and check out more information or resources below and also on our website. Thanks so much for watching and joining us today. Hope you learned something new, and we'll catch you next time.